So it seems that everyone is confused. Everyone's a little bit bamboozled by this right here. Now, this video is tagged as ad gifted as I did receive this for free. Obviously, as you can see, this is the Sims board game. This is out in the UK on the 18th of September. So I feel very, very lucky to have basically early access to this. It is already out in North America, but I just the other week did an unboxing of this. I basically showed you everything that was in it. I obviously hadn't played the game by that point, and since recording that video, I've probably played maybe 20-ish games of this board game. So today I kind of wanted to go through everything. I wanted to go through all of the board setup, and I wanted to teach you how to play, how you actually win the game, how you progress, how you can strategize and take other players down and stop them from winning. Basically, the instruction manual, but in video form. And then I did actually get a couple of questions even on my unboxing about certain cards and certain aspects of this game that weren't fully spoken about in the instruction manual. So I'm also going to go into that, kind of our homebrews, our remedies that we have found to play this game. And then at the very end, I'm gonna kind of just give a couple of my thoughts and feelings, because I really don't want this video to be too long. But let's get into the instructions of it all. How to play the Sims board game. First things first is you're absolutely not gonna need this, because I'm gonna teach you how to play. So move the instruction booklet out of the way. I will say we have actually homebrewed a couple of rules because they aren't actually spoken about in the instruction manual. So if you want to use ours that we've come up with, then obviously very much feel free. If you want to kind of create your own, maybe if you play it through a few times and you're like, oh, this isn't really working for us, but how about we go about this way? I think that's honestly all part of the fun, and I think that's just board games in general. Once you have actually played and you kind of know what is going on, you can start to play around with different things. So this is how you obviously set up the board. Now obviously I'm working on a pretty small space. I will say that is one thing about this game, is it takes up a fair bit of room. So for just this, I'm gonna say that we are playing with 3 different players. Let's use purple. Obviously you need to check that all of the needs are in the green before you start. So obviously grab out all of these. We'll go for pink, and then we'll also do blue. Over here can be another player. Technically, each player is meant to have a side. If you don't have enough room for that or anything, don't worry at all. And also, I actually did not realize, but the venues are actually double-sided. So there's, I guess, a little bit of change, but they all have the same images and they all affect the same needs. So technically, you can just choose whatever you fancy. If you've been playing a lot with one, then you can just turn it over, but they don't change apart from that. But these all go here, and obviously these all affect a different need, which we will get into. This is sort of just the setup. I will say I'm still annoyed by the board and the fact that it falls away from each other. So you've placed these 6 venues. Then of course you need to grab the biggest pile, which is the action cards. You need to shuffle these. Hopefully you're a better shuffler than me. I'm really bad at shuffling. I don't know if you have any tips or tricks of how to shuffle, let me know. I think honestly splitting this between 4 people and getting them to each shuffle and then shuffling it all together is probably your best bet. But once it has been shuffled, I'm actually gonna move this player over here just so we have a little bit of room over in this space, because that is technically where our bank is going to exist. So you take 6 action cards and you make sure that they are all viewable by everyone. So you just grab those 3 and line them up, and then you can do a second row underneath. Oh god, this is a really bad deck for me to be showing off what happens in this game. Let me find one. Oh my god, why are these all boring? Basically, I'm looking for like an action card so that I can show you. Obviously, you're not meant to really like pick and choose what you have here, but for the basis of this video, I am gonna like pick and choose. You are just meant to go for the 6 off the top of this pile. And then once you have those 6, the action cards live in a pile next to it. You then grab the iconic townie cards, or iconic sims, I guess they're called, and you shuffle these in whichever way you see fit. And you deal 2 of these face up, kind of the exact same as the action cards. So we have Izzy Fabulous and we have Vanessa. And then again, this deck sits face down. You can set these up really in like any way you want to. Just for this video, obviously, you can kind of see what is going on. You then take the aspiration cards, you shuffle these once again. And for right now, I'm just gonna put these like over here so that we can kind of see them. And then you grab the die. We're just gonna let that sit there for now because you don't use it obviously on every turn. And then for your moving in, this is kind of getting the players situation. So everyone needs a needs tracker. I've already given those ones out. We've already set all of those to green, and then I do have their plum bobs, which I'm just gonna sit in the middle. The base of the plum bobs obviously line up with the mood tracker. So we have the blue, the purple, and the pink for all 3 players that are here. Then you need to sort out your home cards and your aspirations. Again, you can shuffle these if you want to. Player pink, you draw 2 cards, and then you can actually choose which card you actually want to have. Now, you could even start being a little sneaky here. You could say, well, technically these already have 2 interests. You haven't picked your aspiration yet, so you don't really know, but say there's a lot of like simoleons on there, so maybe you're not going to need this extra simoleon because there's already some action cards with it. So maybe pink would go for Rockridge Canyon. Then that kind of sits like underneath next to the player. And then this one is just returned to the bottom of the deck. Blue goes next. Again, draw 2 and they choose where they want to live. They're going to go for the Bramblewood. And then finally for purple, 2 more, and they are going to choose the Beach House. And then you do basically the same with the aspirations. They have already been shuffled. So you draw 2 and you each pick 1 each. So for pink, unfortunately, none of these have actually matched up with one of the interests, but you can obviously pick an aspiration based off what you see on the board. I actually wouldn't even suggest doing that because these cards can change so frequently that you think you're maybe being strategic. But for example, we can see a light bulb already, so I guess that we are gonna place pink's aspiration card in the aspiration card place, which is this orange one right here. And then we are gonna return that one to the bottom of the pile. Blue is going to go next, and they are actually going to take... There's an awful lot of money on that board right now, and you need to start collecting those to complete your aspiration. Basically, you need 3 of these interests. So that can be all 3, can be the simoleon symbol, they could all be the trophy, or you could have 2 simoleons and 1 trophy. You could have 2 trophies and 1 simoleon, or whichever like order you want it. Basically, you just need 3 of these, and then we know that there's an awful lot of simoleons. So blue actually got really lucky here, and we're gonna give that aspiration to blue. And then finally for purple, we are just gonna choose the Jokestar. They're just purely playing off vibes. So now everyone has their aspiration. That has to stay out because you can change your aspiration at any point. You can also give each of your players these cards, which basically tell you what to do. I'm actually just gonna place one of these here so that we can kind of like keep an eye on it. I like to just have one around the board so you kind of get a reminder of your turn and kind of how the actions go, but they aren't completely necessary. So this is it. You've got all of your play pieces. I actually like to use the middle as home just so you can kind of just keep track of where every player is. However, when you like travel home, you're actually meant to put these like actually on your home lots. So pink would go over on their home lot and then purple would go over on their home lot. Like I said, I just kind of prefer seeing them in the middle, so I class this as home. I think it's just easier to kind of keep track of the game. But basically, the aim of the game is to reach 8 points. So how does the scoring system work? Every time you complete an aspiration, again, like I said, by getting 3 of those interests in like whichever mix and match order you want, you complete an aspiration. You can only complete an aspiration at the end of your turn, but the aspirations are worth 3 points each. And then you also have iconic townies. So if you actually travel to a location and then you hold an interest that they like, so for example, Izzy Fabulous likes this little t-shirt and Vanessa likes this briefcase kind of like business, that means that you can also grab that iconic townie and they are worth 1 point. So you could, for example, complete 2 aspirations and have 2 iconic townies. That would be 3 plus 3 plus 1 plus 1, which obviously equals 8. You could have 1 aspiration completed and 5 iconic townies to win the game. Just know that you need 8 points to be considered the winner of this game. Apparently, the person who goes first should be the person that moved most recently in real life. We just tend to like eeny, meeny, miny, mo it because it doesn't really make a difference, or we'll do like winner goes first if we're playing like a couple of rounds. Just for ease, we're going to say that pink is going to go first. To complete their aspiration, we need to get the logic symbol, I'm fairly sure, or like whatever this is. It's a little light bulb, and then also this little cog. We need 3 of these. Like I said, there is already a light bulb on the board. There are no other interests. However, you could also notice that there is a t-shirt for Izzy Fabulous. So technically, you could go for this one over here, which would mean that you could pick up Izzy Fabulous. However, I have also realized that the light bulb also has the briefcase, which means in one round we could pick up Vanessa Young and then we could also pick up this right here. And that is exactly what pink is going to do. So because we are going after this little light bulb, or we could technically go for the briefcase, we need to find those on the travel board. Now, they are actually both part of the University of Britechester, so pink is going to travel to the University of Britechester. That means that they actually have to bring their fun need down, so you're going to find the matching icon. Obviously, that is that little smiley face here. It matches up in the corner over here. You bring that all the way down to red. If your need is in a red, it means that you can't travel back to that place. So we won't be able, in this like 6 turns that we could possibly have on this needs tracker, we're not allowed to go back to the University of Britechester unless we go home before doing so. I'm getting ahead of myself. Boom. We obviously reached that. So we get to pull this action card, which obviously now we have 1 that goes towards our interest, which means we just need another 2, either the cog or the light bulb, to complete that aspiration. However, when you pick up an action card, you also do the action that it states. Now, not every action card has an action. For example, this one just says win the horse championship and has a little description. That means you don't do anything on your turn. However, this one, annoyingly, is iconic Sims move, and we don't actually have any iconic Sims on the board right now, but I'm going to show you what you would do if you did have iconic Sims on the board. So we're going to give that action card to them. This again sits on your playmat in the area that says action cards. As you start to get more, you can kind of stack them. Just make sure that the interests are shown so that you can keep an eye and like cross-reference to see if you are actually ticking off your aspiration. Obviously, this does mean that we can pick up Vanessa, considering she has the interest that our card now actually has. So we place that next to our player. They now have 1 point. This little plumb bob right here reminds you that iconic townies, iconic sims are worth 1 point. So they have 1 out of 8 right now. You then can replace both of the cards that have just been used, but iconic sims move. So that would be the action for this. Obviously, if we had more iconic sims, this is way easier to explain. But you pass all of your iconic sims that you might actually have to the left. Pass it to the player to the left. They actually cross-reference any of their action cards. So for example, I know this is the first turn, but if blue had any action cards that had this briefcase, for example, if they already had this action card in their stack over here, they would be able to keep Vanessa. If blue didn't have anything that Vanessa was interested in, if they didn't have any briefcases, it would pass to the other player on the left, which is purple. Purple also currently doesn't have any interest cards, but if purple had a briefcase, then they would get to keep it. If none of the players, as it goes round, gets to keep that townie, it just goes back to the person. So you go around, whether you have 2 players, whether you have 5 players, always pass all of your cards. So if we had multiple, they'd have to cross-reference like all of them. Say if we had Izzy, Fabulous, and also Olive, blue would actually be able to keep Olive because they have the books. And then both Vanessa and Izzy would be passed on to purple. Purple doesn't have any interest that they're interested in, so it goes back around to pink. I hope that makes sense. If you need me to clarify like any of the rules, just leave your questions down below. I am happy to answer them. But for right now, after that go, we have 1 point and we also have 1 interest that relates to our aspiration. I'm not gonna play through like a whole game because I have figured out, I feel like the times that we've played this, on average, a game has lasted like anywhere from like 40 minutes with 2 players to well up to over an hour with like 3 or more players. So it really can range. It also depends on kind of like how strategic you're being. If you're trying to like block other players from completing their aspirations or townies and things like that, you can get strategic with this game. But it also, once you've played it a couple of times, the learning curve is really nice, and I feel like it's quite simple. But that's not the only action that you can have. So just to show you some different actions, for this one you would swap one of your action cards with another player. So let's say blue just picked this one up and they traveled and they did their needs and they did all of that they needed to do, which for example this one would be the house or the simoleons. We have to find those. They could go to studio PvP with the simoleon. They would bring down their hunger, and then they would be able to swap this action card actually with this player over here, and then they can put that on their pile. That goes to them, and it's kind of stolen away that interest that pink needed. So that's kind of how you can like sabotage people if you want to. That's how you can start being strategic with other players. When we do the action card swap, we actually don't repeat the action because that's already been done. It's already been claimed. We don't like do the iconic Sims swap again. I know that is a question that I have been asked. I basically feel if an action has already been done, don't repeat it. However, if you pull this action card, which is actually draw to take 1, you may lower any need to look at the top 2 cards of the action deck, take 1 and discard the other. This one is also super interesting. I actually have not been playing by this rule and I only just noticed it as I looked back through the rules before recording this video. If you have a little need icon on your action card, for example, this is hygiene. If your hygiene was actually down on your needs tracker, you can bump that back up if you choose one that has a green need. So for example, this one gets up hunger. This one also gets up hunger. I have not been playing that rule, so this video is helping me as much as it's helping you lot. Obviously, you would get to keep this, so we're gonna give that to purple. For that, they have actually traveled to the purple house, which is the future's past, which has brought down their social. And then they can draw 2 action cards. So boom. Ooh, also very interesting. This is where we've actually homebrewed our rules. I can't believe that the deck just fell that way. These are basically 2 cards that don't really have rules about them in the actual instruction manual. This is where we have come up with our own rules. Purple can either choose from Watch Out, It's Mrs. Crumplebottom. You can take this card from any venue. Basically, if this was in this stack, you could travel to any of these and you would be able to choose it. It doesn't need to like match up with any of the interests is all that means. All players at a venue of your choice lower 2 of their needs, then discard this card. And then for Don, you can take this card from any venue. Again, it doesn't have to have like a specific interest. Attach this card to an iconic sim on the board and they are permanently worth 1 extra point. There is also one of these, which is a Grim Reaper card. You can take this card from any sim venue, discard any iconic sim, and then discard this card. So with these, for example, with the Grim Reaper one, I played this over on stream the other day to kind of introduce people to it. We decided with this, you can just take this and kind of keep it in your back pocket. So if you feel like someone is on like 7 points and all they need is an iconic townie, and you're like, okay, now I want to sabotage them, on your go, you can choose to just play this. You don't have to like play it instantly. So for example, if pink had a 7 right now, if it was purple's go, we could be like, okay, well, I eradicate Vanessa Xiong from you. And we just decided to absolutely remove her from the game. Like, she didn't even go back into this draw pile. She was just removed. She wasn't allowed back until obviously the game had finished and we reset. For Don Lothario, I mean, you can, again, if you don't have any townies, you probably will keep that until you do have a townie and you can attach it to them. And then that townie, he needs to stay with that townie. He is a Klingon, basically, is what the Sims team are saying. He's a little rat man who will just like attach himself to you. He's like that new horror movie. You're never going to be able to get rid of him. He's just gonna hang around like a bad smell. And what I tend to do is just put the townie like kind of on top of Don, and then Vanessa would be worth 2 points. But again, I feel like you can just use these at any point in the game as long as it's like on your turn. So for example, if both of these were on Unity of Brightchester, you could make them lower their needs on your go, which is quite fun. And again, it's a way to kind of sabotage and be strategic. I think these are fun when you get to have them in your bank. However, if these 2 hadn't been the 2 that we were picking up and we were just going for like a normal action, we would actually complete the action of this. So we wouldn't do it when you swap action cards with another player because the action's already technically been done. But for this one, if we wanted to do draw 2, take 1, again, we would keep this action card. So that would go over to purple. And then we would draw another 2 and we could choose what we wanted to. Let's say, let's go for this one, which is reset top. Discard the top row of cards in the card hub and then replace them. Again, purple would get to keep that action cards. Now, as you can see, purples are actually starting to stack up. They actually do have like 3 action cards just from one go. Unfortunately, only one of them, this little mischief, lines up with what they needed. However, they do now have a good range for maybe choosing another aspiration. So when it comes to resetting the top, you remove these 2. I tend to put all of these under the action cards. You're never really going to get through a full deck. And then you need to grab 3 and you replace it. It did say replace bottom. I've replaced the top accidentally here, but you know, you kind of catch the drift. You kind of see what is going on. So we've done one kind of playthrough. Everyone's like lowered the need that they needed to. If we were continue playing, let's say we've got 3 needs that are low, you can actually get all of them to red. But if all of them are in red, you obviously can't really take a turn to travel anywhere because all of your needs are already in red. So blue in this instance would have to travel home. Now, when you travel home, you can choose 2 of your needs. Considering we have to focus on the trophy and the simoleon, we probably want to prioritize those. So we're going to up our hunger, and then we're also going to up our hygiene need. Again, being a little bit strategic with it, what could help you possibly in the future may turn out to not help you, especially if you wanted to like travel to a place to block another person from getting theirs, but you didn't have the need. If you don't have the need, you can't travel to that place. So we've raised those 2, but also whilst you are at home, if you decide that your aspiration isn't really working for you, you actually can draw a new aspiration and then you get to choose. So you just draw the top aspiration. You don't obviously get to like look through the deck and see what you want to choose, but say we kind of prefer our older one, we get to keep that one and discard that one. Again, put it to the bottom of the pile. Or if we wanted to change from fabulously wealthy to best-selling author, which is quite handy for blue in particular, considering we already have a light bulb and we also have this interest already on our home, which is the books, which are 2 that we needed. So that's definitely the best move for blue to do. And then again, you just take that old aspiration, you put it underneath, and you've now got a new aspiration. Let's, for the sake of it, just to show you how this works as well, if we travel to studio next and then purple on their go also decides to travel to studio, you 2 are now in the same place, which actually means that the plumbob die comes into play. So whenever 2 players are in the same area, you have to roll the die. So blue would roll the die. If it lands on a plus, they actually choose to raise a need of their choice. So for this one, we're going to go for the fun need, and then purple would get to roll, and I don't want them. No, stop giving me pluses. Ooh, they got the hand this time around. This little hand icon actually means that you learned something new. So you can take an action card from the other player. So purple actually gets to take an action card from blue, which sucks because they actually had something that they needed, but now purple has gained that. And they've also gained something that they needed because they need the briefcase. So that's actually helped purple out an awful lot. Thank you, blue. And then if it lands on a minus when you roll, you actually lose a need. It can be whatever need of your choosing, as long as it's not red already. It obviously has to be a green need. I'm assuming if all 3 players or multiple players are on the board, then you just all roll. And I think for the action, you still just get to choose 1 card from 1 player. So you just choose randomly which one you want and from which player. And then again, if you have a plus or a minus, you either add a need or you take away a need. And just to show you how you complete an aspiration, we are working on Jokestar right now. We need the briefcase or the mischief. We already have 2. We have the mischief hat and we have the little briefcase. So purple's in a really, really good position. There are interests here. Obviously, there's the little mischief hat over here and there is the briefcase over here. This one's also a pretty good one to have anyway because there are 4 different interests, so that could line up with like a lot of townies. For example, we could take Izzy Fabulous, and then we have 3 interests that we needed. We have the Joker hat and then we have 2 briefcases, which means we have completed that aspiration. You can only complete an aspiration at the end of your turn. So it's kind of like the last move that you make as a player, but once you've completed it, you just basically put it under here. It's scored aspirations. We have 3 points. We also have 1 for Izzy Fabulous. So purple right now is on 4 points. They are halfway to winning. Let's say they had enough to complete another aspiration. On their next go, they could complete that. Obviously, they don't right now, but just to kind of show you how it would work. They have 2 completed aspirations, which is 6. They have Izzy Fabulous, which is 7. And then say they gain Olive Spectre as well. That's 8 points. They have then won the game with those 8 points. When you have completed an aspiration, you just draw a new one. You don't get to have like a choice between 2 of them. You just draw the top one off the deck. And that is the new aspiration that you will be working towards. These actions don't reset. You get to keep the ones that you have, which means that thankfully we already have a jester hat, so we already have 1 interest going towards this aspiration. And if you forget what you are meant to be doing on your turn, this little turn order card basically just reminds you. So if you're going out, travel to any venue, obviously you want to prioritize the ones that have your interest, which by the way, when you are traveling, you can only pick up an action card if it lines up with where you have traveled to. So for example, say if blue wanted this card, they need to look for the frying pan or the mischief. If they randomly decide to go to the park, they can't pick up that action card because none of these icons line up with either the frying pan or the little mischief symbol. They've basically just ruined their own go. So make sure you're matching up all of the interest symbols before you make your mood. Once you travel, you obviously take down the need that relates to being taken down. You do the action or you raise the need. So for example, we would raise the food one. Then if any of your action cards line up with any of the iconic sims, then you pick up a sim. You can't pick up an iconic sim if you are traveling home. You can only meet iconic sims whilst you are out and about, whilst you are actually on a venue. So don't think, oh, I traveled home and I've just realized I have an interest that Bonehilda likes. Can I take Bonehilda? The answer is no. You have to like meet her whilst you're out and about, you know? It's kind of like playing The Sims. You actually have to be out to meet townies. When you are at home, you only get to raise 2 needs of your choosing, and then you get to draw 1 aspiration and discard 1, depending on however you pick. You also don't need to do this every time you go home. If you don't want to draw an aspiration, if you just know that you want to keep your other one, we just tend to skip that step and we just like keep the one that we want to play with. Obviously, if you travel to the same venue as another player, you have to roll the dice and do the interactions that we have already spoken about on the die. And then at the very end of the go, that's when you score. If you have befriended a townie, you add that point to your locker. If you have completed an aspiration, you then move that under and you have 3 points to your name. That is how you play the Sims board game. I hope this was helpful. It seems confusing, I know. When I played it with stream, it kind of only really took 1 game for chat to then be like, okay, yeah, I'm like starting to get this. There are a lot of rules to remember, but once you've actually played it once and you are getting used to it, like I said, I didn't even realize that this was a thing. I've been messing that up my entire game. I didn't even tell chat about that on stream because I didn't know that that was a rule. It's all fun, like, figuring out how you want to play. And even like I said, if a rule isn't mentioned, just coming up with your own kind of rules. I feel like everyone has their own home rules when it comes to Uno. They all have their home rules when it comes to Monopoly. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is in the same sense and you start creating your own home rules, for example, like we have done with these cards. Real quickly though, I just want to go through the action. Oh my god, grilled cheese actually gets up 2 needs, which is pretty cool. I just want to see if there's maybe any other actions that we haven't spoken about. Reset bottom, again, you just take the 3 cards from this bottom and choose 3 new ones. Swap one of your action cards, we've already been over. Reset bottom, we've gone over the iconic Sims move. I still need to shuffle these because they feel like they're not shuffled perfectly. Travel again, you may travel to another venue. Lower the need, then take 1 card. You don't have to travel to another one if you don't want to, but if you want to gain another action card and you have the needs to be able to travel, feel free to do that again. In our home rules, I wouldn't stop anyone from picking up this card if they didn't want to travel again. I feel feel like that's just player's choice, whereas you could actually force them to travel again. Maybe they can't pick up this card unless they have the needs to actually be able to travel to one of these places, and that could make the game harder for them. I think I've gone over everything. I actually don't think there's anything that I missed, which is quite impressive. I hope this video was helpful. I hope I remembered like everything that you can possibly do in this game, all the different like interactions, how you can like steal from other people and stop them from winning. You know, you can get very strategic with it. Obviously, that works better if like you decide before the game whether you're gonna like pay attention to each of those cards and like actually do that strategicness, or if you just want to play it like a little bit more chilled and you're just trying to focus on yourself instead of focusing on other people. Obviously with like 2 players, it's way more easy to strategize because you can kind of keep an eye on what they're going for and how they're playing. Whereas if you have like the 5 players, I imagine that is a little bit more difficult. My thoughts on this after playing, I actually really enjoy it. And I know some people, maybe some people in the board game community personally wouldn't enjoy this. I do think there is a little bit of a learning curve, but it is actually quite easy once it clicks for you. I reckon after like 2 to 3 to 4 plays, this is going to be so easy and you're going to know the rules like that. I'm hoping this video helps with you knowing the rules, and I do think it's really, really fun. I get the most fun out of it when we are playing a strategic game and me and my girlfriend are like, okay, we're going to watch what each other are doing and we're going to try and like override it. She's great, by the way. She has won, I want to say like 98% of the games. I think I won once against her, and that was like the first time that we played. But the first time we played, we weren't actually doing any of the action cards because we forgot that they were actions that had to be done. We were just kind of collecting points, and then it finished in like 10 minutes and we were like, damn, this game is like really, really fast. But like I said, since that point, since we've actually been playing and like moving strategically, we've probably spent anywhere between like 40 minutes for like a 2-player game, and then it can go definitely for over an hour. I feel like on average with 3 players, chat being the 3rd player, when I was playing this over on my Twitch, twitch.tv/EnglishSimmer, by the way, it was taking probably about an hour, given we were kind of get chat like into the rules and trying to like let them understand it. And obviously like people were taking their time deciding because we wanted to like show everything off. But yeah, I think with 3 or more players, you can definitely get an hour's like game out of it. And I think it's hit that like sweet spot of being easy enough to pick up, but then also like very, very fun. And you do start kind of like trash talking each other, which I know we've trash talked our Sims, especially in The Sims 4 for the past 11 years. So it's nice to do that IRL with people. I haven't played this with friends yet, and I do think it probably again is one of those games that you just like play and then they clock on to the rules rather than you sitting and like describing the instruction manual to them, because I think it can come across like quite boring on paper, and it's actually way more fun once you are actually playing it. But I would love to hear all of your thoughts. I will still say like a couple of the pieces feel quite flimsy. The home cards specifically are like very, very bendy. A lot of it is done with like cardboard, which I guess from like an eco perspective is actually quite good. Like a lot of the pieces are recyclable, and I do actually quite like that. I know that I said initially when I saw it, I was kind of worried that it was all through cards and that would make it feel a little bit cheap. I do still wish that instead of the plastic plumb bobs, they had given maybe a couple of like iconic townies or like base game townies, like people who aren't part of the iconic Sims but like a metal cast of them, kind of like in Monopoly. I just think that would kind of take it to that next level of it not feeling like it was all done to be maybe like the cheapest possible way to create it. But even so, with it being a card game, I think it's very fun. I am enjoying it. I don't think it's for everyone. I think it's more of like a party game rather than like a serious board game. But with being able to get strategic in it, I think that adds to the fun of it. I think it adds to the competition. Maybe we're just more strategic with it because we're really in our rummy cup era, and so we really like sabotaging each other. But if you've played it, I would love to know your thoughts and feelings on it. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. There may be something that I've missed. There may just be something that you're not really too sure on and you kind of want to see how I've personally been playing it, and I am down to answer your questions. I appreciate you all so much, and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.